And I want to say this about self-doubt, because self-doubt allowed me to not share my music for over a decade. But self-doubt is actually a tool. Self-doubt is a tool to create more confidence for yourself. It's kind of like darkness. When we talk about light and darkness, you actually need darkness to help you find light. So self-doubt sometimes I think is good. It's like, oh yeah, actually, I'm not that confident in myself in this. So maybe I should practice that a little more, right? And it makes you practice your craft more. So I've been practicing my guitar and practicing my vocals more, which is allowing me to build confidence.
Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all, from psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there. The Reluctant Medium is part of the Ethereal Network. Here's another podcast you may want to check out.
Hello, my name is Melissa Oatman, and I'm the host of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness. I'm a teacher, healer, intuitive, and single mom of twins. I'm an empath and a recovering people pleaser. I created Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness to help other people like me learn how to stop living their lives for others so that they could start living their absolute best lives. I cover topics in spirituality and self-improvement, like setting healthy boundaries, working with the archangels, and protecting your energy. I end every episode by pulling a card of guidance to help you get a message to start your day off right. I also interview fascinating guests who cover a wide range of self-help topics. If this sounds interesting to you, then what are you waiting for? Start listening today.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Reluctant Medium podcast. So happy to see you again today. And hopefully you're watching on Ethereal Network TV or YouTube or listening on your fantastic favorite platform. I am so delighted to bring you today's guest. What a story. What a story to share. And what a voice, both vocalist, like just speaking and also singing and playing, which we're going to get into. I have Aaron Wexler with me today. Hey, Aaron, welcome.
Welcome. Doctor, thanks for having me.
Aaron, I'm going to list like your titles, but I want to hear directly from you about who you are, how you identify. But right now in front of me, I have athlete, coach, entrepreneur, creator and host of Within the Game podcast, and author of The Inspired Athlete, which I really want to talk about today too.
Yeah.
All correct? Are there any more titles we should add? Musician.
All the things. Musician, artist. You know, it's so funny when I hear all those things, they're all titles, right? Those are aspects of who I am, but really I am a spirit having a human experience, learning as much as I can about my own creativity and growth, and it expresses through all those ways. So yeah, most recently musician, but yeah, entrepreneur, athlete, coach, author.
And humble person. Which is like, I'm so happy to have you on my show. Once in a while, there are some folks that, you know, and you have a book and everything to share your message with folks. But once in a while, there's a person that I run into that I'm like, I just want people to hear their story. And you are one of them.
Thank you.
You have been through some shit, and it reminds me of one of my favorite lines from The Shawshank Redemption, that he crawls through a river of shit and winds up clean on the other side, right? That's
Absolutely.
what it feels like. So with that as a primer, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to do what you do and how you came to write the book and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me. Honored to be here. Yeah, you know, The Inspired Athlete. So I've been an athlete my whole life, played baseball, and then I discovered volleyball, ended up playing at UCLA and a little bit on the Pro Beach Volleyball Tour. and struggled. I was in love with sports. I just love to move and compete, but I struggled to find that inspiration, right? And I feel like a lot of athletes go through that struggle, whether it's like losing or going through injury. For me, it was my second knee surgery. It was on my other knee. It was the exact same injury that I had a couple years before, and it was at UCLA, and it just crushed me. I was just like so frustrated with myself and the game itself. And I just went through this big frustration. And so I wrote about this in the book, but this pain point was that I actually left the team my senior year. And that's the year that UCLA went on to win the championship. And it was just brutal for me. And I ended
Ouch.
up, beating myself up quite a bit, was in shame, was low and depressed and very uninspired. And I ended up going back to my coach, apologizing with tears in my face, and just told him that I really apologize. You obviously didn't need me, but that was not the right move that I made. And I apologize, and was able to go back and volunteer as a volunteer assistant coach, and won a national championship as a volunteer for the women's program 5 years later. So it was kind of this cool full circle moment. And at that time, I was really into personal growth and like self-development. And I was learning lots about visualization and yoga and metaphysics and the spiritual world. And I started to apply that to how I coached and how I was working to be a leader. And at that time, I was working with kids. And so all those things led me to this idea of, winning is awesome, but there's so much more. For example, yesterday, the El Segundo just won the Little League World Series, and we're all going to remember them for winning, but there's so much that goes into it. There's this big journey, this personal growth journey. And that's what led me to this idea of the inspired athlete, because to me, inspired living, like living your life in an inspired way, is the goal. Yeah, winning is nice and it's great, and we should win. We should go for winning. But to stay on a path of inspiration, to me, that is the goal. And so that's kind of a long answer, but that's how I went on this path to writing that book.
Yeah, there's so much depth there. Let me just say, I read the reviews, or some of the reviews about your book, and the majority of people talk about how, yeah, this is so useful as an athlete, but it's useful for the rest of my life. It's useful for everything. And I can't wait to pass it on to other people.
That's
which
cool.
was such a beautiful
Cool.
thing to read. I don't know if you've read those reviews, but they're so great.
I
They're
love it.
so
And
good.
I just want to mention too, for someone who might be listening, who's like, I'm not an athlete. That's cool. Good for him. But so I just want to say the energy of the inspired athlete is within us all. That's the main message of the book, is like, it's within you. If you want to breathe and move, that's the inspired athlete. Like winning and competing, that's your ego, and that's okay. But the energy of the inspired athlete wants to expand in the body and move and breathe and feel good, right? And feel really good. And it's a lot about emotional intelligence. And I just wanted to mention that because I knew that word athlete is going to turn a lot of people off because they don't identify with that word. I'm just reminding everyone listening to this, you are an inspired athlete within this body.
Oh, thank you for that. And I should say, I do not identify as an athlete, and I'm inspired by you and your work and the way that you present and the things that you talk about on your podcast, Within the Game. Go check it out on your favorite listening platform. Or are you on YouTube too? You're on YouTube as well.
Absolutely. YouTube.
Yeah,
100%.
heck yeah. That's what you talk about, a champion mindset. It's being this inspired person, not having to perform all the time at your highest level. It's really about this being, the beingness rather than the doingness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the word inspiration to me, as you know, like we work together, like it's about your spirit. It's about staying vertically aligned. To me, that should be prioritized over everything else. And by vertical alignment, I mean your head, your heart, your feet, your connection to the cosmos, that vertical alignment. And that's part of inspired, right? In spirit. And finding that connection, I think, is the priority. And that's the basis of the energy of the inspired athlete.
Well, thank you for that segue. Because that takes me right into the next question that I had for you. Because, all right, so you're speaking to my psychological mind here, because you created the pyramid of inspired living.
Yes.
And of course, that reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs to achieve, enlightenment or whatever. And I love that you have a pyramid behind you.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so cool. That's awesome. I wanted to talk about this because how do people know how to be vertically aligned? How do people
Right.
connect with whether or not they're in this aligned space? And I think that this pyramid is the perfect kind of pathway or depiction of what that might look like. So, can we talk about that for a bit? And how did you come up with
100%.
this?
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking about it. So, for those listening, the Pyramid of Inspired Living is a pyramid that I created based on John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, which is painted on the outside of the gym at UCLA. And you look at it every day. It's a big part of the UCLA culture for all sports and all people involved with UCLA. The brand of UCLA is kind of based on that pyramid. And it's an awesome pyramid, and there's lots to it. And Coach John Wooden is a legend, one of the best coaches of all time, any sport. And at the top of his pyramid, it says competitive greatness. And there's all these other things that lead up to that. And it's great, right? I mean, it's obviously worked for him. He's got 10 national championships, worked for UCLA, like the leading institution in championships. So the school knows how to win. That said, going back to that time where I was going through all these expansive thoughts, right? I was really thinking about life and why we're here and what's all this for, right? And I was looking at that pyramid, and for some reason, there was a disconnect between competitive greatness and like the top of my pyramid. If I were to make a pyramid, it was like, well, yeah, competitive greatness is awesome. Yeah, I think it's great. I would put it on like the second row to the top. But the top for me, going back to what I said, is that idea of inspired living, right? Living on a day-to-day basis, knowing that we're not going to be inspired all the time, knowing that, but also knowing that that's the trajectory that we want to stay on. So even if we're not inspired, or if we're bummed out, or if we're depressed, or if there's pain, a ton of pain is a big part of it. We know that we're still on the pathway to staying on this trajectory of inspired living. And that's the basis for the pyramid. So I basically used his pyramid as inspiration for me, and I created my own. And I actually, in the book, I even say this, I encourage everyone to create your own pyramid or compass or mandala, whatever it may be, that reminds you of where am I going? Because otherwise, if you don't do that, I think you're just letting other people tell you what to do all the time and where to go and what mold to fall into or what title to fall into. But if you have a path of your own that's like, I'm heading in this direction, I think that's really helpful. So I had made this pyramid of inspired living kind of as just for fun. And I thought it was kind of cool. And so at the end of a year, I was coaching kids. And at the end of the year, for the end of the year gift, I put the pyramid of inspired living on one side of this paper, and I put John Wooden's pyramid of success on the other side. I laminated it, and I thought it was kind of a cool end of the year gift for the kids. And that's what I did. I gave it out. It's so funny. I remember going to Kinko's and like sizing it and all this stuff and laminating it. And the parents of the kids thought it was pretty cool too. And so anyway, I gave that pyramid out, and that was it. I just let it go, and I was like, cool, maybe it'll help somebody. And then years later, one night, and this memory is very vivid for me. One night, I like woke up from a deep sleep from my back all the way sitting up, like boom, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I got this nudge, and it was like, hey, remember that pyramid you made? You need to go write a book about that pyramid. And I was like, okay. So
Nice.
yeah, I ever since then, I went on a journey of writing about the pyramid.
I have a question for you about this, and then I would love to get into the specifics of the pyramid.
Sure.
How did you learn to trust inside? Like, learn to trust that you were moving in an aligned way?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's an ongoing project, right? It's an ongoing project to trust yourself. But I think a big part of that journey is to get quiet. As soon as you get quiet, you're with yourself. So for me, like when I get quiet, usually there's two voices that are going on in my head, right? There's the true self and the ego. And you've helped me a lot to tell the ego, hey, I don't really need you right now. Appreciate you. But why don't you go sit over there for a little bit? Because I want to access my true self. And my true self, I think, is the voice that I want to listen to more. And I've been able to allow that voice to be stronger than the ego. In the book, I talk about strong voice and weak voice, and that's more champion mindset. But that's, again, those two conversations that are going on in the mind. And strong voice meaning I'm going to win. Let's go. I got this. We're good. We're going to win. We're amazing. Weak voice would be like, I'm tired. We're going to lose. I don't think we can do this. A lot of self-doubt. And that's, I help athletes out a lot with that, because the weak voice is there. So it's like, how do you transfer that into strong voice? So going back to your question, I've been able to build up my intuition because I'm able to separate the ego and the true voice now. And I'm allowing that true voice to come through more, which is really limitless and magnificent, right? That's the place that I want to listen to more. And that's where I want to get the intuitive nudges from more. So yeah, I think it's separating the ego, allowing the true self to come through more, and letting that voice guide more.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. I just want to like pause and let that answer soak in. That you are limitless and magnificent. You know, it reminds me of Chris Hemsworth.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing a series on Disney Plus. It's called Limitless.
Limitless. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Where he looks at his fear of whatever it is, heights, for example, and he does the thing anyway, trusting that he's safe inside and he can move forward, and trusting that in his own magnificence, right? His own capabilities of doing things that perhaps, like, quote unquote, the weak voice doesn't believe.
Yeah. And just to build on that, like, you've been a big help of my journey, but I've learned from lots of different spiritual leaders and different mindsets, and the common denominator that keeps coming up in my spiritual path and journey, and this idea of spiritual growth and understanding of everything, is that we are all part of the same cosmic love soup. We're all part of that, and these individual expressions, right? And as we become more and more aware of that, or if we keep remembering that, I like that phrase, remember who you really are, right? If we keep remembering that and coming back to that, it's like, oh yeah, then everything becomes a little lighter, and everything becomes a little bit more like, oh yeah, let's get back to that. And then all the worries diminish, because it's like, no, I remember who I really am. I'm this part of the cosmic love soup, magnificence, limitlessness, right? And then that's like, oh, that's actually really cool, and I can go from there.
Yes, it is really cool. And to bring it full circle back to what you initially said, in order to recognize and remember, I love that word too, because it's already in there. You just have to put it back together. First, be in silence. And that is a number one tool, right, for any growth, is be in silence.
Can I share one more tool about that real quick? This is something that I've been using lately that's actually super powerful. It's a little scary, but I want to share it just because it came through in the moment. It's a phrase that I've been asking myself throughout the day, which is, who am I and what am I here for? Who am I and what am I here for? I mean, it's like, that's a big question, right? The biggest question. But in the back of my mind throughout the day, that actually helps me a lot. It helps me, especially in mirror work, when I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am. Okay, who am I? Oh, yeah. All right, cool. Right? It's like that. It's like the prompt to yourself that really helps you go through the day in a more expansive way. So I just wanted to share that.
Absolutely powerful stuff. Absolutely. I did an interview recently with Dr. Mark Mincola, who suggests doing 10 minutes of mirror work and asking questions like that. 10 minutes a day for a week.
I'll share that I started that, and I can only do a few seconds without getting weirded out a little bit. It's a little hard to do when you're like, whoa, hey, what's up, dude? Like to yourself, but it is powerful. And my suggestion is to do 10 deep breaths first before going to 10 minutes.
Yes, good idea. I've been doing that kind of work for years now, and 10 minutes feels astronomical to me.
Right.
I mean,
me too.
2 minutes. Okay. But 10 minutes. Wow. But you get to the point where it really is like, hey, I love you.
Yeah.
It's just so easy after a while. But anyway, we'll get to that in the top of your pyramid, inspired living. Let's talk about the bottom layer of the pyramid. I'm curious. Well, let me just ask you first. in your pyramid, because I'm, of course, likening this to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is a
Mm.
psychological thing. In order to move to the next layer on the pyramid for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one needs to first achieve the first layer. Is it similar in your pyramid, or are these all just synchronistic? They all sort of go together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, it just seemed like foundational principles that were just like, these are things that just have to happen before we start talking about being inspired or even
Cool.
emotional intelligence, right? Like love, family, health, gratitude, just like that. It
Those are
just
the
seemed,
things in the first layer.
yeah, I have it right here. I'm just looking at it, but
Yes.
it just seems to me like those are just worth noting as foundational vibes, you know?
Yes. I'm wondering if we can break those down a little bit
Sure.
because the way that people think about these things vary, right? But I will say about the health thing that I once heard this and I went, oh my God, that is phenomenal. People who have their health have a million wishes, and
Yeah.
people who don't have one wish, and
Right.
that is to be healthy, right?
That's very well said. Yeah.
I love that. I'm like, oh yeah, because I went through, and actually, I was reading some of your stuff when I was going through a struggle in December, this last December. I was deathly ill. I had COVID again. And on top of that, I got the flu and I was down for the count for a month. It was absolutely awful. I couldn't do anything I wanted to do. And I realized, oh shit, that is absolutely correct. That phrase. I had a million wishes when I was feeling healthy, and now I only have one.
Right.
I
Right.
need my health. And in January began this whole process to really targeting my wellness.
Hmm.
And, reading through some of your things, it was just like, that connects now because I've never considered myself an athlete or even anyone that's really in tune with the body and like being healthy and taking care of it that much. And so your stuff really was a part of that work
Mm.
along with working with a nutritionist. But thank you for the work that
Yeah.
you've done.
Amazing. No,
So,
that feels really good to hear. I would just say, I think most people would agree, and this is coming from Abraham Hicks. You know me, I'm a big Abraham Hicks fan. There is absolutely nothing better than feeling good. There's nothing
mm,
better. There's nothing better than feeling good. Feeling good that's amazing. That's, you know what I mean? Like, think of anything better. Is there anything better?
nope, there's nothing better than that.
This is like, it's
Nothing
the
better than
best thing
that.
in the world.
It is. And you can tell when you're feeling good versus not good.
Right.
So, okay. So that's in the bottom layer of your pyramid. There are
Yeah.
4 layers here. The first layer is love, health, gratitude, and family.
Yeah.
So we covered health. When you consider health, do you think of other types of health than physical health or
Oh
it's
yeah. Yeah. All
okay?
the health. I mean, you got to be healthy in all the ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? I
Okay.
mean, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people look over the spiritual part, you know. It could be great in your body and good in your mind, you know, but that going back to that vertical alignment, that spiritual connection, that you want to feel good there too. And I'll say this might be relatable to a lot of people, like spiritual for a long time for me, spiritual health felt like a big question mark. Like, what does that mean? Spiritual health? I think it's as simple as feeling good about who you are and what you're here to do. Going back to that question, right? That's a good feeling. Going back to feeling good, it's a good
Yep.
feeling when you know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And that's part of the spiritual health that I would encourage all of us, including myself, to keep refining and fine tune.
Yeah. I would also add it feels good when you are curious or excited about pursuing the
Yeah.
understanding of who you are and what you're here for.
Totally. Yeah, because it's easy to scratch that. It's easy to be like, that's too ethereal, that's too strange, or I'm gonna focus on making money and pursuing this career and da 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 da. That seems more like logical in my hands. This is what I'm gonna do. This is my next action step. Totally. And I get that. So yeah.
Yep. Okay. How about love? This is foundational in your pyramid. Is
Oh
love
yeah.
romantic love? Is it friendship love? Is it love of self? What is it in your pyramid?
Yeah. So John Wooden left out love. I watched an interview with him before he passed, and they asked him if he had any regrets. And he was like, yeah, the biggest regret is I left out love in my pyramid of success. And so that was the inspiration for me to like, well, let me pick off where you started. And, like I'll put it in mine. I'll put it as the cornerstone. It's not just the first block, it's the cornerstone of the pyramid. And yeah, it includes all the love, all of it. I write about in the book that self-love is number one. Before you love anyone else or your sport or your game, you have to love yourself first. And I want to say this about self-love. This is something that I thought was like cute for a long time. That's cute. Self-love. Oh, that's nice. It wasn't until recently, and I'm 40 years old. It wasn't until recently that I really meditated on what that means and really delved into all of what that is. Self-love is just honoring yourself, right? It's like honoring yourself before anything else and acknowledging yourself and acknowledging this vertical alignment, this big cosmic soup, and acknowledging that you're part of it and just saying, hey, what's up to yourself, And I just think that that's so overlooked. It was overlooked by me for so long because I've heard other people talk about self-love and love, and it's just like, that's nice and cozy and warm and fuzzy. But I really would encourage people to really allow yourself to dive deep into what that really means. And I think it can actually be overwhelming when you really get into it. It's like, whoa, it's almost too much. I'll just share this with the audience. I actually had a plant medicine experience where I went there and it was like this divine love that was overwhelming. And you could feel like you're a part of it, but at the same time, it's like, whoa, it's strong. It's very strong,
Yeah.
but it's there. So, you don't need plant medicine to access it or tap into it. You could tap into it at all times of the day. It's there. It's constantly around us. It's what we're all made of. It's how we reproduce. It's how we heal. It's everything. So that's why it's number one. It's the cornerstone.
It's got to be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be, because I'm a Taurus, so I'm really practical.
Mhm.
I'm curious how an athlete portrays self-love versus an athlete who does not experience self-love. How might that look?
Oh, that's a great point. I would just say the athlete that lets the ego take over completely might not have room for the self-love, right? Because the ego is just driving you to win and beat the opponent and constantly be in combat and constantly prevail. And like I said before, that's not a bad thing. But sometimes the self-love and even the overall love and gratitude for your opportunities and for your opponent, even that can get lost if you're just focused on that and you forget about that love. And then I even want to bring this up. Going back to that Little League World Series yesterday, the coach was mic'd up and you could hear him speaking to the kids, and he was constantly saying, I love you to the kids. And I think that's been less and less taboo. I think that's been taboo for a long time. And now, not just in sport, but just in everyday life, like it's okay to say I love you to someone. It's not like a whoa, 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 whoa. That's a big thing. I think it's becoming less taboo. I think it's totally fine to say I love you and to remind people that we do have love for them, especially, but going back to athletics, especially in that moment. We need to remind ourselves that we love ourselves, we love our opponents, we love our teammates. There's like this big love party happening, but we can still go back to our craft.
Oh, I love how you just ended there, because I wonder if folks who demonstrate a balance between the ego, like let's win, and the self-love are actually able to craft better, perform
I
better.
think so. Yeah, I mean, I'll bring up Kobe Bryant because that's who I really wanted to interview. He was my favorite athlete growing up. I recently saw there's more and more clips of him from the interviews before he passed. And I recently saw a clip. I even posted it on my stories where the interviewer asked him, is it better to focus on winning or not losing? And he said neither. He's like, no. You focus on the craft. You focus on the journey. Focus on being the best version of yourself. Winning will be a byproduct of that, but you don't want to focus on outcomes like that. He said something, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, you don't want to be outcome oriented. You want to be, you want to enjoy the whole journey and be one with the journey.
Period. Right there.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Okay. I mean, we can do a whole podcast on the cornerstone of your pyramid here. We've covered the cornerstone, love. We've covered health. You also have gratitude and family in this bottom layer. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I can briefly mention those. So family, I've been through a lot of pain, as you know, and during pain, I got closer with my family during a very difficult time in my life. And what that did for me is it made me realize, even more so than before, how important family is. Family's going to be with you no matter what, whether you win, whether you lose, whether you're having a beautiful, amazing, prosperous time, or whether you fall on your face. They're going to be there for you. They're going to be there with you. If they're not, make that happen. I talk about this in the book too. So like sometimes there's circumstances that pulls families apart. As an inspired athlete, we can pull family back together, right? Because we know that there's a bigger picture going on. It's not just about circumstances and outcomes. It's about family. Like family, that's your fam. You got to fam up, right? You got to stay fammed up. That's your fam. And then gratitude, I think, is just a great way to be. It's a good starting point. And you wake up in the day, you wake up and you say thank you for all your blessings in your house and your body, and it's just a good vibe to start with. And then I think as you go through your day and you start to level up, you can get to appreciation. Appreciation, I think, is the next level to gratitude. And you can really start to appreciate, like, not just be grateful for it. Like, great, that's nice, but appreciate. Ooh, it's like a little bit deeper and stronger with that feeling. So those are just vibes. I think that's just how you carry yourself as a foundational level.
Yeah, you're right. Appreciation feels deeper.
Yeah.
I remember that many folks who have listened to my podcast know that I experienced a huge trauma with fertility stuff. And I remember sitting among the lavender in my garden and just really appreciating everything about them, how they looked, how they smelled,
Yeah.
the bees floating around them. And it was weird. Like, why am I feeling such love for this lavender plant? Like, why? But there was so much transformation that had happened before that, this bottom layer of your pyramid, that
Yeah.
you're right. It became appreciation.
And you know what appreciation can lead to? I actually did not write about this. This is something I realized recently. Appreciation can lead to awe. Awe is where you want to be,
Yeah.
right? Awe is like, whoa, look around. And just no reason, just be in awe for it all. A great place that I get awe from is the ocean, right? You just look at it and you're like, whoa, right? Or just like you said, being in nature, but that is like appreciation times love exponentially. And then it just turns into awe. That's a really cool place to be.
You're right. This could happen in your own backyard. I have well, it's actually my front yard, but I have this little, just like tiny plot of dirt in my front yard, and it had been empty forever. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to take some wildflowers and throw them there. The littlest tiny little seeds. And now they're like these giant flowers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, how does that even happen?
And you know what? You know, this just came to my mind right now. The true self wants to be in awe all the time. The ego doesn't really want to be in awe because there's really nothing more to do. If you're in awe, you're just basking in it. If you're not there, then it's a kind of a fight. So that's why I like that gratitude on that foundational level, because it can lead to appreciation, which can really lead to awe.
Oh my God, you're tying this for me. Okay, so coming back to being an athlete, and again, you'll have to educate me a little bit on this because I'm not an athlete, right? But
you're an inspired athlete.
Thank you. I'll take it. I'm going to own it. The athlete that is on the field, for example, playing soccer.
Yeah.
The athlete who is in awe is completely just in the moment, grateful for every little thing, in awe of this, all this community coming together, the smells, the sounds, the voices, the energy, as opposed to, I got to get that ball in the net. I got to get that ball in the net. And if I don't, I'm screwed. I'm nothing. I'm probably going to be fired, whatever. There's a big difference.
There's a big difference. It's like a dance. So I'm watching Messi right now. Messi is like the top soccer player in the world right now. He won the World Cup recently for Argentina, and now he's playing for this club team in Miami. And he's like, the whole spotlight's on him. You know, he's like the guy, right? But if you really study the way he plays, he's dancing out there. He's dancing. yes, he wants to win. And yes, his ego is going to keep pushing him to win. And I think that's a good thing. I think when it becomes really awesome is when the dance and the ego work together and it's not a fight. And you can watch it, it's actually visible. You can see that his movement is in flow, right? And we can talk about flow too, but you can see it. It's like fluid and it's a dance, and he's probably going to score a goal, but even if he doesn't, it's okay, because it's kind of like going back to that detachment, you know, but he's still dancing. And I think that's where a lot of athletes get stuck, is like, I have to figure out a way to allow this stuff to happen. You can't trying and allowing is a big part of it too. That's another discussion, is like, how do you do more allowing and less trying?
Man, you're speaking my language. So I tell
Yeah.
people all the time, you got to be in reception rather than grabbing for the thing. Okay. So your bottom layer we've covered: love, health, gratitude, family. The next layer up: clarity, confidence, creativity. And the creativity I want to talk about for you specifically too.
For sure.
Can you talk about those three things?
Clarity, you know, just having a vision, knowing where you want to go, like being clear-minded, you know, that clarity. I recently stopped drinking alcohol, and I'm over a year on the no alcohol journey, and that has improved my clarity so much. Oh man, it's been such a blessing. Having clarity of mind, clarity of purpose, just having clarity, that's a big blessing. We don't have clarity all the time, especially on like, what should I do on a big decision to make in life? And it feels really good to be clear. Sometimes clarity follows action. I'm going to quote my friend Craig Siegel on that one, because I actually do agree with him. Sometimes we're not exactly sure what we need to do. So we just got to take action and just do it. And then we can get clarity after. And I actually agree with him. I think it's a little better if we can get clarity first and then take inspired action, but that doesn't happen all the time. But I think that's what clarity is. It's the feeling, going back to emotional intelligence, right? This whole thing is EQ, really what it is. But feeling clear about who we are, where we're going, what we want, that's clarity. Confidence, that's a tough one. And it actually ties into the creativity for me, right? Because I've been confident as an athlete my whole life. I've been confident as an entrepreneur too, because I really like creating my own path. Musically, which we can talk about, that's been a creative expression of mine that it's just now coming forth. And I've had to have the confidence to allow that creative energy to come forth. And that's taken me a long time. I didn't always have the confidence there. And I wrote about confidence because that's a great feeling when you're confident about yourself. Oh, it's so good. Like when I jump on the volleyball court, I'm very confident in myself. Like I know the rules of the game. I know the strategy. I know my technique. I'm confident. I'm just starting to find that more and more now for myself musically. And I think it's a great pursuit of energy. Can I be more confident? Can I a big part of confidence is letting go of self-doubt. Can I let go of self-doubt? And I want to say this about self-doubt, because self-doubt allowed me to not share my music for over a decade. But self-doubt is actually a tool. Self-doubt is a tool to create more confidence for yourself. So it's not just like eradicate self-doubt, which I thought that I actually did some posts about that. No more self-doubt. And a really powerful creative, Adam Roa, I just had him on my podcast, and he was like, no, self-doubt's actually really good for you. You actually need it. It's kind of like darkness. When we talk about light and darkness, you actually need darkness to help you find light. So self-doubt sometimes I think is good. It's like, oh yeah, actually, I'm not that confident in myself in this. So maybe I should practice that a little more, right? And it makes you practice your craft more. So I've been practicing my guitar and practicing my vocals more, which is allowing me to build confidence. So I wanted to mention that about self-doubt, because don't eradicate it. Let it be there for you so that you can use it as fuel to create more confidence for yourself. And also fear, right? Because fear, we didn't touch on fear, but fear is a big part of this whole thing. And a lot of it is afraid to lose or afraid of other people's opinions. FOPO, Dr. Mike Gervais talks about no FOPO. But I want to mention Laird Hamilton for a second, because he taught me about fear. Now, Laird Hamilton's a legendary big wave surfer, right? So he rides the biggest waves in the world and basically risks his life every single time he gets on one of those waves. And I asked him about fear, and I'll never forget what he said. I was like, how do you deal with that fear going down these waves? And he's like, I go right through it. I go right through it. I don't pretend that it's not there. Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, that's a big, scary wave, but I go right through it. And I like that because that's acknowledging, yeah, I'm a little afraid of this. Okay, great. Now I acknowledge it. Now I can blast through it. Same thing with doubt. Yeah, I don't really believe in myself that much right now. Okay, cool. Acknowledge that. Boom. Now I can go through it. I really like
Yeah.
that because that's not ignoring stuff. That's like acknowledging
No.
things, you know?
Yeah, man, I can see how it builds on that first layer because you're acknowledging and honoring still, you're honoring yourself. That's that
Yeah.
self-love. Like I'm honoring that there's the fear there. I'm also
Yeah.
honoring that I'm going to go through this too. I'm going to go through
Yes.
this.
And you personally helped me with that, with some of my things that have happened in my life, right? Because we don't want to ignore stuff. Going back to our magnificence and like our vertical alignment, it's all there for us. Really, at the end of the day, it's all for us. Not life
Yeah.
is happening for us, not to us. So that's a good reminder too.
Yes, especially when really, and it's very hard in that moment, but when things are really, really fucking heavy, okay, really heavy, that's the time to listen to that little tiny thing like, wait a second, this is leading somewhere. I don't know where
Yeah.
yet. So I'm just going to lay here in the fetal position until it's clearer, which
Yeah.
is where your clarity is, right? I can see how these are all connected. Clarity sometimes is a process, not like I just know. Clarity is I'm going to get creative and move through this BS and the scariness. And I'm going to have the confidence I'm going to be all right on the other side. And then I'll be clear. It's like this whole beautiful process. I love that it's included in your work
Yeah.
here.
And creativity, I'm stoked on creativity right now because I've been listening to like I just said, Adam Roa. If for anyone listeners, go check out his stuff. He's amazing. He's a poet. He's all over YouTube. Rick Rubin. I've been listening to a lot of Rick Rubin, legendary producer, music producer, and then even Taylor Swift talks about this recently. Those three have been like in my head about this idea of creativity, which is we have to create. We have to. We have to create. It's like a compulsory part of who we are. We are creators. We are creators. We are here to create. And that is like, period, right? Period. We are here. And then the sharing part of that is the next level. It's like, okay, I created this. Let me share. That's when the ego comes in. And that's when we're like, okay, people are going to like this and stuff. I want to share what Rick Rubin says is like, as long as you believe in it, you can share it. You don't have to worry about the FOPO, the other people's opinions too much. That's the work though, right? That's the work for a lot of us as creatives is to work on that so that we can blast through that. Yes, acknowledge it, don't ignore it, blast through it and get to share because sharing is where the power is. But even if someone's listening to this right now and they don't feel comfortable sharing, that's okay too. Just create because it's fun, you know? And the reason why I put that in that pyramid is because I think a lot of athletes don't like, okay, so you create on the field, you create through your craft, you are naturally creating in your sport as an athlete. So that's there, that's that creativity. But the kind of the creativity that I'm encouraging a lot of people to do is to find something else through that you can create through. Like for me, it's music. I just feel alive when I play my guitar and I feel so good. And it's like a feeling of freedom. It's a liberating feeling. There's no rules. Yeah, you can maybe hit the wrong note or play out of time. Yeah, probably shouldn't try to not do those things. But at the same time, if you do, there's really not a big consequence. There's really no consequence. So create, create to create. And I asked Adam Rowe about that recently, and he said, it's a must. You have to. That's what you're here to do. If you feel stuck as a creator, which happens all the time, for me, we all feel this stuckness. That's okay. It's not the end of the world to feel stuck. It's just another observation, right? And it's like, oh, I feel stuck. We can either unpack it or let it pass. But getting back to that creativity is like compulsory.
I love it. Love it. Okay. So I have a hard question for you.
Okay.
Is it okay for me to play one of your pieces at the end of this
Oh,
podcast?
wow. Sure. Amazing. I'd be honored.
That would be so cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone, stay tuned to the end of this podcast. I'll play one of Aaron's pieces. So good. So
Appreciation.
good. I get
Appreciation.
chills. It's so great. Okay, let's move up to the next layer on your pyramid.
Okay.
So we've covered the first two layers: love, health, gratitude, family, clarity, confidence, and creativity. The third layer up: mindfulness and bold action.
Let's go.
Yeah. Talk about it. Talk about it.
Well, this is where I think it gets fun. I think this is when you can start to feel pretty freaking powerful, right? I mean, the mindfulness, right? So the mindfulness is, I didn't want to call it meditation. I didn't want to call it spirituality. I didn't want to call it some of the things that came to mind to like be close to the top of my pyramid. But mindfulness is an all-encompassing word that's like, be mindful. Be mindful of all the things that we just discussed, right? Because sometimes we get lost in day to day, or like other people or whatever it may be, we get lost. That mindfulness, it includes the meditation, it includes getting quiet, it includes the vertical alignment, it includes the spiritual growth, it includes the breathing, the breath work. Going back to mental health, it includes the mental and the spiritual. It's like this word that encapsulates be here now. Remember who you are and be here now. And all the things below the pyramid, they're included in this moment, right? That's mindfulness. And then once you're at that place, which I think is a real inspired feeling, when you're mindful and you're remembering everything we just discussed, that's when you can step into bold action. And really what it is inspired action. But I wanted to use the word bold because you got to be bold, right? We all got to be bold. There's a lot of things that we don't want to do for whatever reason. We're going to make up reasons all the time. But that action, that's where it's at. And that, to me, that bold action, that's where the competitive greatness is, right? Because we're taking action. We're being bold. We're stepping on the court. We're facing our opponent. We're trying to win. Yeah, let's go. And you're blasting through all the self-doubt, and you're blasting through fear. You're blasting through all your darkness and all your stuff, and you're going for it. And you're allowing yourself to go for it. And by the way, this could be used for doing an email. It's not just playing a game. Like bold action. Like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to reach out to this person. I'm going to do whatever it is I'm going to do. I'm going to allow my pyramid to build up to this boldness. I'm going to go for it. Let's go. Right? So that's bold action.
Yeah, that takes me right back to what some of those reviewers said. This could be beyond sports or being an athlete. This is life.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a soliloquy that I actually did on a podcast about bold action. I closed my eyes and I got into it. And I ended up putting that in the book, in the bold action section, which is just like this. It's kind of like a rampage of going for it. Allow yourself to go for it. I love that phrase, allow yourself to go for it. Dr. Wayne Dyer taught me about allowing. And it's like getting out of your own way and just going for it and not being so attached to the outcomes, like we said before, and going for it just to go for it.
Yes, that is fun. You're right.
Yeah.
That is very fun.
Yeah.
And the mindfulness is also noticing as you're sitting down to write that scary email, my heart's going and I'm breathing a little more shallowly. Okay, perhaps I can dial that back, but I'm also going to freaking go for it. Yeah. I'm going to do the thing. That is so cool. It even feels fun the way that you talk about it.
Yeah, it does. It does feel fun, and this whole thing is, I'm hoping that other athletes will pick up on all this stuff too. And not just athletes, really anyone, but specifically athletes who are so regimented, right? We go to training, we go to practice, we go to games, we go home, we eat, we sleep, do the whole thing again the next day. And it can grind you out as an athlete. Yes, it's beautiful and it's a fun journey, but my hope is that all these things can awaken athletes to be like, yo, this is amazing. Like, this is so fun. And look what I get to do. And who cares if I win or lose? I mean, obviously I'm trying to win, but like, who cares? This is awesome. And it's a challenge. Really, like, that's what we human beings, we like that. We like to be challenged. We like to challenge ourselves. And so, yeah, that's what all those blocks of the pyramid lead to this next thing, which is the inspired living. And that's just again, it's a vibe, right? It's not one thing. It's an energy of where we, in my opinion, we should try to be. That's where we should try to be.
That's the top of your pyramid.
Yeah, that's the top of my pyramid.
Living.
Inspired living. Like, that inspiration is like where we should try to bask. We should allow ourselves to be there as best as we possibly can.
You know what that implies to me? It implies that that potential is already there.
Yeah.
And just what you said before, we just need to get out of the freaking way.
Yeah, that's it.
It's already there.
And most competitors, let's say not athletes, let's call them competitors. Most competitors are so focused on winning. And that, again, I don't want to diminish. I don't want to demonize winning. I think winning is freaking awesome. I love winning. You know, I don't want to talk down on winning. I just want to say that winning is a complete byproduct of all of this. When we're in that space, we're just winning. It just happens, you know?
I love how you just put that. It's a byproduct.
Yeah.
And it probably, to some folks, might feel like, oh my God, that totally just happened. And I was just having fun.
Yeah.
Like, what? That is so great.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I wanted to mention one other thing, because going back to, I think it was the clarity section, we are manifestors, right? We're creators or manifestors, and we do have the power to visualize. And like, if it's winning, like I was focused on that in 2011 with the UCLA team. I was like, let's win. But it wasn't win the championship, and it wasn't win the game. It was, let's win the moment. The game and the championship were like byproducts of winning the moment. And I wrote this whole visualization to be so in the moment that it's like we're grabbing them, we're like creating the moment, right? That's the win of the moment. It's like, this is what the intention is, and here's what we're gonna do, and let's go do it, you know? So I wanted to throw that in, because I think that's a huge part of winning.
Enough said. That to me is like, period.
Yeah.
Period, the end. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for your inspiration.
Yeah.
Your inspiration for inspired living. I really feel like people who are non-athletes would really benefit from this in tandem with athletes. It's just awesome. Wonderful. And your podcast, it goes beyond athletic topics as well, right? Lots and lots and lots of inspiration there. Metaphysics and all kinds of things that you're curious about, just like me.
you know, as a podcaster yourself, like, you know, that this thing called curiosity has really, it's like the fuel for us as podcasters, right? We're like so curious, and that curiosity has really helped me to expand into more expansion, like learning about people and being more and more curious, and like more mindsets and more tools and different ways of thinking, right? And more relationship building, you know? So yeah, I've been loving the podcast journey, and yes, it started with sports. It's now evolving on its own, going into spirituality and wealth building and creativity and all these things. So yeah, it's within the game.
Yes, that's just evidence of your expansion yourself, right? You've name dropped all kinds of folks that inspire you, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And you
kinds.
Inspire me, you know. I love your podcast. I love listening to you on other podcasts. I mean, you drop knowledge, you share knowledge, and the whole spiritual metaphysical world, it's so fun to explore. There's really no right or wrong. It's just people's access points to it, and it's so interesting, and I love the way you articulate it. And yeah, so keep doing it.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm not going to stop anytime soon, that's for sure.
Well, the other cool thing that I'll just mention real quick is, like, as podcasters, we never know who's listening, you know? So I found Dr. Maria as a listener when I heard you on another podcast, and I would encourage listeners to reach out, let us know what you took away from this, or if you have questions or comments. Like, we like that as podcasters.
We most certainly do. Comment below if you're watching on one of the video, YouTube or Ethereal TV, or send an email. Where can people contact you? It's
probably the best. My personal Instagram is AWEXLA, AWEXLA. Also at Within the Game Podcast on Instagram, and then on YouTube, Within the Game.
Perfect. Aaron, thank you so much. I appreciate your wisdom today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for once again tuning into the Reluctant Medium podcast. I hope today's episode has provided you with some wisdom and some skill and knowledge to move toward the apex of your own pyramid, whatever that looks like for you in your life. Stay tuned for after the podcast episode to listen to Aaron Wexler's song Beach Walkin' from the audiobook The Inspired Athlete. Until next time, my friend, may you stay inspired and may you be well.